Hi there. So after my talk at the CRS Italy event, a few people have asked how I do my background system. So I wanted to put together this short video to explain how I do this and sort of what it took. I played around with this. This didn't happen instantaneously, but I'm happy to share what I did in case anyone else wants to do the same. So where I'm going to start is with the the settings that probably many of you have, which is to have a virtual background in Zoom. So here I have my various background filters, and I can have the background of the San Francisco or something like that, or the world in Zoom. Now, to do what we need to do here, I'm actually going to turn this off to show you what I have in my background. So actually behind me, I have a green screen, and this isn't some kind of fancy green screen. I took a big green sheet, and you can see that it is just a very large green sheet that I have attached to the back wall behind me. Now, I even used little green thumbtacks to make sure that it was nice and straight. And it is important to have a fairly even color. You don't want to have a lot of folds or a lot of shadows on it. And you can see there are a few over here, just like a few folds, but I found that a few folds was okay for what I wanted, but you do want to have a pretty consistent color. Now, one of the things that happens is you might have shadows that fall on you, and those shadows are actually going to mess you up a little bit. So I bought a couple of little lamps here, and those lamps actually shine behind me to keep the entire green sheet that's behind me um, as equally um, lit as I can. So I have a couple of these just kind of sitting behind me um, so that there wasn't any major issue in having kind of a nice consistent green color behind me. But you do need a green screen for what we're about to do. All right. So the software that I used for this is called OBS. So OBS is a software that I believe it's free. I'm almost certain it is. It's a freeware software. Um, and I'm actually going to remove the components so that I'm going to just start with a blank page. So this is OBS right here. This is the Mac version of the OBS. A PC version is present as well. So in OBS, there are scenes and then there are sources. So my first source for my OBS material is going to be my camera. So that is going to be a video capture device. So I'm going to create my Max camera. This is the first source. And I'm going to choose the device. It's going to be the FaceTime HD camera. So here is OBS, and right now all I have is as a source is just my camera. So you can see it's the same green. This in the middle is Zoom, on the left is what you see in OBS. Now within that source, you can do quite a few things. OBS is very powerful, and you can choose the filters option to enable effect filters. So you see effect filters. One effect filter you can do is called chroma key. That is the green screen filter. Sorry, just one second. I've lost. So the green screen filter allows me to set a color and settings for my green screen. So it could be a blue sheet behind me. There might be a red sheet behind me. It doesn't really matter. I just can't be wearing the color of that. So I'm going to set this as green, and then I'm going to play around with the similarity values until I see that I'm fine, right? You can still see me, but now you can't see the green behind me. It's become transparent. Now, sometimes you need to play around with the smoothness a little bit, sometimes with the similarity. This is where it's really, really key to have a pretty good lighting setup. Because if I hide these lamps, if I turn off these lamps, the problem is, first of all, you see now my forehead is having trouble. My hands are having trouble. I'm going to have to lower the similarity. And when I lower the similarity, OBS is no longer recognizing the left part as the green screen because it's too dark. It's too much in the shadow. So I had to kind of play around with this lighting to make sure that anything that might be in the shadows or might be a little darker is lighting up so that I have a more or less even color behind me. And then I'm going to change the similarity. I'm going to move away the zoom. You don't need to see that. I'm just going to play around with this until I see something that looks reasonable. So now I look okay. I look reasonable. There's a little bit of an effect with my fingers if I move them too quickly. I'm going to try to even optimize that by smoothing it just a little bit. That's a little better. But essentially, there it is. Now OBS is recognizing me, and it's recognizing the green screen behind me as transparent. So I'm going to close that. So now on top of this, I have to add my PowerPoint. So I'm going to go ahead and open PowerPoint. Here is my CRS talk. I'm going to go start, and I'm going to set the screen. And with the PowerPoint, what I did, and this isn't necessary, but it helps, I'm actually going to change the slideshow setup to be window, browsed by an individual. You could do it with the speaker version, but it's a little more complicated, and it sort of becomes a little more problematic because you can't see yourself because everything. So I do an individual. And then I start the slideshow. And then I resize the window to be just fit my slideshow right here. So this is my slideshow. This is me. So I have to now add another source. So I'm going to add another source, and I'm going to use a window capture source all the way at the bottom. I'm going to call it the PowerPoint source. You could call it whatever you want. And OBS lets you choose what window is the source. Now, I have a lot of different windows, everything from Dropbox to various software that I have, but I'm going to go down, find Microsoft PowerPoint, and I'm going to find this presentation. So there it is right there. That's what it looks like. I'm going to click OK. So now within OBS, I'm only seeing my PowerPoint, and I can resize it to anything that I want, but you can see the PowerPoint is actually in front of me, at least for now. So within the sources, I'm going to rearrange the sources so that it's first the camera and then the PowerPoint. So now I become above it. You can also resize them as you like so that they are clearly visible in the screen, however you want to do it. And your screen is the blue box. So I'm just going to rearrange this to be in the box. Now, you can do a lot of other things within OBS. So for instance, I don't like seeing this menu item I don't like seeing the title there. So I'm actually going to go into the PowerPoint source. I'm going to choose filters. I'm going to add an effect filter, the crop pad effect filter. And I'm actually going to shave just a little bit off the top, just enough so I don't see that thing at the top. I could shave more if I wanted to. And with regard to myself, I actually feel like I'm doing okay, but if I wanted to, I absolutely could have cropped myself. So for instance, right now, there's a lot of space to my left, a lot of space to my right, and a little space above me. I could have gone in there and created an extra filter, which is a crop pad filter, where I can crop to my right. So let's do, I don't know, 200. And now I'm cropped relative to my right. I can also crop relative to my left. So let's crop relative to 400. So now you can see I'm actually quite cropped. You can't even see my right hand. It's somewhere over there, but the cropping has stopped it. So probably a little too much. Maybe I just want to crop a little bit from the end and crop a little bit from the top. This is not necessary, just something you could do. I usually leave the cropping at 0. One thing that I noticed that as I'm looking, I always get confused my right and left. If I want to point to the word Yevgeny right now, what my brain wants to do is point like that. And I'm pointing in the wrong place. I should be using my left hand. Because of that mirror effect, you can actually take and drag, and now you can mirror yourself. So now this is much more intuitive to me that if I want to point towards the word Yevgeny, now I'm pointing this way, even though, as you might see in the zoom, I'm actually pointing the opposite way in the zoom. So you just have to get used to it, which way you want to point for it to make sense. So there's a couple of extra things, but now you can see this is you changing your own size. You can change the position of the window. So as you move forward in your PowerPoint, here is the PowerPoint window. As I move forward in the PowerPoint, you can see that OBS automatically updates because it's the PowerPoint window that is being updated. And that works with movies, with animations, with anything that PowerPoint is able to do. So I'm going to get to a movie and I'll show you just playing the movie. Now there is a slight delay. The delay is very small, but you have to take it into account when you're kind of advancing. So maybe you see there's a sort of a 1 second delay in advancing that you kind of have to just keep in mind relative to what you're seeing on the PowerPoint. So the last bit is how to move all of this that you've done, your PowerPoint, your picture, all of this into Zoom. And what you actually have to do is create a virtual camera. So there's a separate OBS tool you have to download. It's called OBS Virtual Camera for Mac. But once you've downloaded it and installed it, within OBS, you can just go to Tools and Start Virtual Camera. And now you have a virtual camera that's on. I'm going to bring back my Zoom settings and bring back my Zoom window. And now when I go click on the video, I have 2 options. I have the built-in FaceTime HD camera, but I also have that OBS virtual camera that I've created. And so when I click on that, now here is the window that I see. So now I can play around with the size of the, the PowerPoint. I can move the PowerPoint anywhere I want. I'm just going to set it to be the maximum, and I can also move myself anywhere I want. I'm just going to move myself over here. But when I'm done talking, what the audience is seeing, they are seeing my Zoom. This is what they are seeing. But everything that I am working with and doing is within OBS. So again, I can make myself bigger and smaller. I can move myself around wherever I want. And I can flip myself if I really wanted to for some reason. And OBS is very powerful. You can set all sorts of filters, croppings, and other effects. There are lots and lots of effects that OBS can do. But that is how I create it, and what the audience sees in the Zoom window is that. The slide, me in front of it, I can point. It's somewhat intuitive. Now there is an end to it, right? Because of the effect. Now I'm seeing a little bit of a gray. You might see this gray window. All that means is I didn't quite correctly set my chroma filter. You might be seeing a little bit of gray here. So I'm going to go back to the Mac source and the filter, and I'm going to change my green screen filtering until that is no longer visible, but I am. So I'm actually going to create a custom because my green screen is a little darker. So I actually want to set it to be as close as possible to my green screen. And now that should be good. And that is how you create this presentation that I just showed you.